So what we do in the course is we build every week until the last one. And so week 5 is the peak of the plan. And then week 6, we do a proposal to this technology and how you're going to implement it. So I think what the great thing is, we kind of build every week. And so it's not overwhelming. We really take bits and pieces. We set objectives. We talk about each individual thing, like creating the piece of content, then reusing the piece of content, then promoting the piece of content. So it really builds. One of the feedbacks I've gotten in the past is people really like it because I have them do it in a PowerPoint. And that was something I never really thought either way about when I first started teaching this class, but the instructor before me had it in a PowerPoint. And I thought, you know what, this is kind of different and neat, but it allows them to be creative, which I think in our industry, you need to be, you have to stand out. And so if you're going to present something and maybe your colleague is presenting something else, learning how to use a PowerPoint even and showing off your creativity and making something work. Because a lot of times some of those strategic roadmaps I have them do, get really small. And I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to put it in here. I'm going to teach you how to do this, because when you're presenting to someone, you want to make sure they can read it too. You can't just, maybe, especially in these times, you can't just pass it around, so I teach them those kinds of things too, which I think is really great real world stuff. And so that's, so for the last one is a Word document, everything else is in PowerPoint. And so I think that's a little different. And then the building, of course, I've taken a lot of the courses, having a master's degree from this program as well. And so I like the build. And I think this class does a really good job of breaking it down. And it has a lot to do with the book and how the book, classifies different things and their importance to building a good content marketing plan. I would probably say this is a 4 because, I don't think it's something that people can't do. I worked, I was planning a wedding, and I was getting my master's degree at the same time. And some of those weeks I was up till 3 a.m. doing it. So I don't think it's that intense, but I do think that you can't just start it the day of when something is due, each assignment. And I'm sure that does sometimes still happen, but it really, you can tell. And so you have to do the research. There is a lot of research to it, especially when we talk about new technologies. And talk about planning objectives, is that I'm just not going to say, my objective is to, get more people to buy my product. You got to have, proven results. And I do require a good amount of resources. So that's why I would say a 4. I don't get hung up on a lot of the stuff like that. But I do say, if you're going to talk about something, you probably need to cite the source, so I'd say a 4 is what I would give it. Well, I love a good story. And I always say that. I'm always like, I love a good story. I'm going to tell a story. And so hopefully, and I don't think I've ever got any bad feedback about my stories. So that's a good sign, because I'm going to find one person that's like, she needs to quit it with the stories. But that's what I do. I tell stories about something similar that I've seen, whether it was firsthand or, a client, or maybe maybe a competitor's client. And I tell a story and like, this is what we did. This is how it worked or didn't work. And this seems very similar to what you're doing. And the feedback I get is that's very helpful to people. And so I'm a natural storyteller anyway. And so I kind of, something when I'm reading their discussion or something else, think, oh, that reminds me of XYZ. And so then I'll tell the story about how we did it. And a lot of times, they'll come back and be like, oh, that was a great idea. And I ended up, like, one of the stories I always tell is about, I think they have 4 locations. It's a bank, and they had the HR director doing marketing. They now have a marketing director. We've made them enough money. Now they have a marketing director. But I was like, let's get a committee. Like, you've got all these young people running around and they're all doing like amazing things in the community. Like, let's get a committee. And they were just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So they brought these people in, and we went with it for years with this committee just driving the content marketing. And I've told that story several times because they get frustrated because they're, they're the marketing, or they're the HR director doing marketing, so they get it when I say that, the HR director is doing marketing. That's an issue. We need to get them. And then, I was able to build it so then they could hire a marketing director. And I think she even has an assistant now. And that's been, 7 or 8 years ago now. But, I think those stories is like, oh, well, if they can do that at a, 4-branch bank in Appalachia, then we can definitely do it over here. And so I think that's kind of my teaching style, so to speak, is that, I tell stories. I really try to engage. I'm a communicator, and I'm always like, I'm very tough on other people's communication because I overly communicate, if anything. And so I always tell them, if you do not get an email back from me, like I even send a thank you email if you send something, because I want to acknowledge that I've got it, because that's always my fear, is like, did they not get that? I haven't heard anything. And you don't want to bug anybody, but you also don't want to, have them miss out on something. So I always try to communicate. And like I said, I try to treat them like I do my clients. And so I'm not just personality wise, I'm not, hard on anybody or negative. I'm not going to be like, oh, that's the worst piece of content I've ever seen. I try to really meet them where they are. And so if I can immediately see something and I can say, okay, I can see 3 or 4 things off the bat that we need to change. I'm very complimentary at first, like, here is what you did really well, and then here are some things that is just going to make it better, so I really try that kind of style. I think that's like what's that, positive, negative, positive, that we learned in business writing 100 years ago, but it's still working. So